Oh my gosh. I am such a recovering conflict avoider. I used to think I was actually really good at solving conflict. I'm kind of curious how many of you would rather run from conflict. So if you're here live, let me know that you're here live and answer that question. Would you like to moonwalk out of conflict like I used to? um, but I used to think I was really good at it. And it turns out I actually just pretended it wasn't happening. Like, oh, it's fine. It's, well, at least this. And I would reframe it so it wasn't a problem, that we weren't experiencing a conflict and I didn't need to worry about it. And that has gotten me into a lot of trouble because if you avoid conflict, you manufacture fake peace. You manufacture fake peace. And I want real peace. I want real peace for you because fake peace feels unstable. And so it's kind of like, that thing at the gym that's like half of a ball. I think it has a name like Ubu. You can use both sides. I don't really know. But like if you've ever tried to do anything on it, it's really unstable, which is great for a moment to, help you grow and get better at using your muscles, but it is not a way to live your life. It's not. That instability creates anxiety, it creates fear, it creates a host of problems, not just for you, but when we avoid conflict, that fake peace infiltrates all the things that we're doing in other aspects of our life, in our team, in your family, in all ways, in all the ways. So I I get that conflict is scary. I know that it is, at best, something most of us aren't here for, unless you're, the Enneagram mates who are like, let's go. But even after a while, they get kind of tired of it. The trouble is that in our world, conflict is getting worse. And even if you notice just this week, people are up in arms about conflicts over the Super Bowl, and everybody's got an opinion and they're fighting about it. But nobody's really coming to solutions. And in the workplace, because we have this really new way of working, some people have returned and it feels the way it always has in structure, but most people aren't like that at work now. We've got more remote environments, more hybrid environments, which is incredibly challenging. And even if you are back in the office, there's a different kind of way we relate together now. And conflict is easily happens in those types of situations. So, one of the ways that I have discovered that is the best for resolving conflict is actually understanding your Enneagram type. So, when I was in a toxic work environment and conflict was the major issue, it was the thing that got blamed all the time. Like, oh, you're so bad at conflict. Conflict is the problem. We're just having so much conflict. Our leader kept talking about conflict and not other things that were part of his issue and lack of leadership skill, and it just kept blaming conflict. And so it caused so much more conflict and trauma. I can remember sitting at our table. My office and my partner's office was where we had our admin meetings, and I can remember sitting at that table and just being like, this isn't getting any better. Blaming conflict is making us have more conflict, and we're just avoiding it, and realizing I was avoiding it. We're all avoiding the conflict. We talked about how do we want to do this, but never actually resolved anything. And that created more and more insecurity, more and more instability. And it actually created a toxic place that for me, I ended up leaving. Actually, almost everybody ended up leaving, and lots of therapy for everyone that I know that was involved in that situation. Workplace trauma and workplace toxicity is so common, and the presenting injury is often conflict. We can't get to some of the root things if we can't get through the problem solving of conflict. And we all want to get through it faster. We all want to like get to the end, and we'd all like it to be without drama. right? Like, please, is that you? Would you like it to be without drama? Because as much as I love a musical and would like my life to be one, I don't really like just drama, right? Nobody likes drama. So when you are thinking about how solving conflict happens in your life, the most effective way is actually to start internally. We start with, okay, what's motivating me? So the Enneagram is a personality framework that helps us understand why we think, act, and feel the way that we do. And all of those, our thoughts, our feelings and emotions, and our actions are all a part of how we actually resolve conflict and what happens when we're trying to solve conflict. And the Enneagram has these deep motivations, understanding the deep motivations behind why we think, act, and feel the way we do, clearly then have a connection to solving conflict. And the Enneagram actually has all kinds of different components. It's one of the reasons I think it's the most powerful personality framework to use personally and professionally in the workplace, because there are several different groupings within the Enneagram that help us understand how different people approach a host of things. But today, how they approach conflict. So there are 3 conflict resolution styles in the Enneagram, and they group 3 different types together. So if you're new to the Enneagram, there are 9 types, which if you like math, they get together in groups of 3. So there are 3. Sometimes they have different formal names, but really conflict resolution styles. It's how we face disappointment. Sometimes they're called harmonic triads, but really it is how we face when things don't go the way we expect it to go. And a conflict is always something we didn't want to have happen. There is disappointment in it. And so that's why it's a conflict resolution style. It doesn't mean that you can't choose something different, but the style means that this is going to be your kind of first approach. It's going to be your internal story that begins in how you approach conflict. And we've been talking about stories this month. And, Kwame and I, if you listen to the Joyosity podcast, we talked last week about the stories that you tell yourself in negotiations and conflict. Yesterday, I talked about the stories of leadership. And so that initial story is what your personality is telling you about conflict. So the first group, the 3 groups are dynamites, cool cucumbers, and silver linings. And so the first group, the dynamite group, this is the group that really responds more reactively to conflict. They are more emotive. They are more explosive at times as their first general response. And kind of their catchphrase to that is, aren't you upset about this? They kind of want you to get in it with them. They want to feel connected to, like, this is a problem and I want you to feel that it is a problem too. Now, that's not bad. In fact, it's really important because they help us remember that emotions are a part of how we solve conflict. We have to deal with the emotions. You can't just leave emotions off to the side. I just want you to think about that for a minute. If you were frustrated about something and somebody just pretended that that wasn't a big deal, and they're like, you should not worry about that. Immediately you're kind of like, I'm going to worry about what I want to worry about. And it also feels a little bit like gaslighting. Like, why shouldn't I worry about that? Why could this not frustrate me? So this group, the dynamite group, this response helps all of us remember that our emotions are involved. And that's really such a power to this group. And so this group are 4s, 6s, and 8s. And they kind of just jump in. Now, sometimes the explosion is internal. It's like an implosion of what's happening on the inside. But there is this reaction that is, this is bad. And I feel it emotionally. And the 4s are really connecting to that emotion and like to sometimes enhance the drama. 6s are afraid that they're going to get blamed for something. So they're like, yes, we should be upset about this. And 8s really just like to get in there. They don't want to be vulnerable. And so they're going to move forward and try to solve it fast and let their anger lead the way. And so for that group, those things aren't necessarily bad. But what I want you to think about is how you can just reduce the intensity. It can be too intense for other people to help you get to solving conflict. So just reduce that intensity a little bit. The second group are what I call the cool cucumbers. Now, if you have done any workplace conflict training, you're going to assume that this is the best conflict resolution style. It's not the best. It's just one that we have chosen as in corporate culture as this is the way to solve conflict. Now, there are some great things about cool cucumbers, and there are some great things about solving conflict in the way that I'm going to describe, but it is not the one and only way. So, this group, the cool cucumbers, rather than react emotionally with the conflict and like connect to the emotions of it, they deny the emotions and put them in a box over here. And like, I just want the facts. What's the data? How am I going to go through this? Do you recognize that? We talk about being dispassionate, which is a good skill to be able to set emotions in their proper place. But this group, when they put all of their emotions off to the side, we are denying that our emotions are part of what's happening. Now, the great part about the cool cucumbers is that they are looking for what's the facts. Kind of their catchphrase is more like, well, it's in your corporate policy. You know, what is the pre-decision we've already made here? What are the facts? What's the data? That's really important. We need shared data to make a good decision in the problem solving aspects of conflict, right? So that's a great thing that cool cucumbers bring to the table. They can help us remember that emotions are not the only part of what we do, but also we need the data. What are the facts? Who said that? Where did we get that information? All of that. The cool cucumbers are first to bring that up, and we need that in a conflict. What I want the cool cucumbers to work on, these are 1s, 5s, and 3s, 1, 3s, and 5s. That's the right order. 1s, 3s, and 5s, they are wanting to make sure that the data is protecting them. And you can't wrap yourself in the data. So 1s want to make sure they do it right. 3s want to make sure they get to the goal as fast as possible. And 5s want to make sure they're competent and they know. And so conflict feels like failure to this group. And so they want to get through it really fast. And so if you're in this group, do you recognize that? You know, if you're here live, you know, do you recognize that kind of like, oh, I just want to get through it? And when that happens, what I want you to remember is just to slow down a little bit. If you feel that rush to move forward, slow down a little bit and see if you can get through the conflict the most effectively, not necessarily the fastest, because you can be prone to jump to a solution that doesn't actually address the root problem of the conflict because you're moving so quickly, because you don't want to feel any of the emotions and it feels like failure. So I want to get through it fast. That's the cool cucumber group. So the last group is the silver lining group. And this group, I deeply know, as if you were here live at the beginning, you know, like it's not a problem. You know, at least I wasn't even really having a conflict. It wasn't a big deal. I can remember one time after a conflict when I was a school leader, my fellow assistant head of school, she was like, that was terrible. That she just treated you that way. And I was like, what? I didn't even recognize that, because in the moment I was just kind of like, I'm gonna just ignore that this was a big deal and let her talk it out and blow it out. And well, in the moment, that was a fine strategy. But then to pretend that it didn't happen after, which is what I was doing, was avoiding actually addressing the problem, that it was true. She wasn't being respectful in her communication. She was bringing up points that were actually untrue. Like there were all kinds of things to address that I was just ignoring. And because I was like, well, at least she just blew out, you know, or, well, at least we found out this, you know, like, well, at least is what this group can do. And so this is 2 7s and 9s. And we just have this positive outlook. Like, it's fine. Nothing's wrong. It's okay. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. And if we avoid it, then it's going to work out okay. And the problem the problem with ignoring it or pretending that it doesn't happen is that it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So rather than addressing the conflict early, what was a molehill becomes a mountain, becomes harder and harder to solve the problem. So for this group, what you bring to the table that is so great is like, oh, we're going to get through this like positive idea that we can make it through without making it a big deal. Like that's actually a benefit that silver linings bring to the table. So 2 7s and 9s are like, yeah, we're going to get through. We all want a helpful vision of the future when we're stuck in the uncomfortable nature of conflict. Like that's the worst feeling. And so when somebody can bring like this idea that, okay, we're going to get through it. I can see where we're going. Like, at least this isn't part of a big, like we see the positives in it, the learnings in it. That's actually really powerful. But for this group, if we do that so much, you actually aren't addressing the root cause, or you're not addressing it fast enough. And so face the discomfort of a conflict is the action step for this group, for 2 7s and 9s, making sure that 2s, that working through a conflict doesn't mean you're going to be rejected. 7s, you're not going to be trapped in that pain forever. And 9s, you're not going to lose connection. Actually, you get more connected. You have better and less pain, and you are more loved when you move through a conflict together, when you find your way to a solution together. So those are those 3 groups: dynamites, cool cucumbers, and silver linings. And avoiding conflict is only going to create more drama. Now, if you understand each of those Enneagram types, first for yourself, then you can see how on a team, if one person is the cool cucumber and they're only concerned about the data, and one person is just like, well, at least, and pretending it's not happening, just that those 2 people are approaching it differently. When each one of them understands and can start to adjust and get to the problem solving of solutions, that's when conflict actually becomes a tool of connection. When you get curious about yourself and curious about other people, you see new solutions that you didn't see before, when your personality was trying to keep you in this coping mechanism of either reactivity or avoidance or lack of emotion, and putting emotions aside. Those coping mechanisms don't work for long-term conflict resolution. So that's what I wanted to share today. If you don't know the Enneagram, if this is new for you, an Enneagram Navigator session is a great place for you to start. And so we spend time together. I help you identify your Enneagram type and really what are the next steps for you in using your Enneagram. So if you've always been curious, or maybe you've taken a test, and today's idea about conflict, you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not a 3. Maybe I am that 7, or I always thought I was an 8, but now hearing this, maybe I'm actually a 4. Like when you listen to these different aspects of the Enneagram, it opens up new opportunities for you to really understand how your type interacts with the world and what you can do to be the one who's in charge of your life rather than your personality being in charge of your life. And that's why the Enneagram Navigator session is so powerful with me, because I get to ask you lots of questions and you discover really what's next for you. And so you can get all of these great tools in understanding the Enneagram, solving conflict faster, solving conflict without as much drama, with so much more curiosity and empathy. And you start that by really understanding your Enneagram type. And that starts with a Navigator session. I'm also hosting the Joyosity Retreat in March, and it is a 2.5-day retreat for women leaders here in St. Louis. And we're going to deep dive not only into the Enneagram, but storytelling and values and how you use that as a leader. You're going to create a plan. It's going to be fantastic. If you're interested in either one of those, you can just DM me. You can say something in the comments and I will come back and make sure I get you information. So if you're interested in the Enneagram, it is truly one of the most powerful professional development tools I've ever used. It's the reason I have in the past used Myers-Briggs and StrengthsFinders, and they're great and they serve their purpose. I'm not saying that they're not worthy, but I think the Enneagram, in my experience, has been the one that has brought about the most change. It has brought about deep cultures of positivity and belonging. People understand how they get their work done better, so they're more productive, they're more efficient. It's also increased the ability to scale and grow for several of my clients. So rather than being stuck, their organizations are actually moving forward. And that's the power of using the Enneagram and in your professional development. And that's why I love to use it. So for you to start as an individual, or maybe you want to come to the retreat, that is an amazing place for you to come. I also speak. So, always come to me for speaking, but that's why I'm talking about the Enneagram so much, is because it is such a powerful part of the framework that I use to help cultures create to help organizations create positive culture with complex people. because we're all complex, and the Enneagram demystifies that quite a bit. It's incredibly powerful. All right. I hope that this was helpful about conflict resolution today. If you've got questions, always feel free to ask. I'm always open to that. And I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.